Vermeer paints my mother. Note, this book is partly inspired by certain paintings of Johannes Vermeer. The first few lines refer to the camera obscura, which is a kind of a device that 17th century painters used to get the interiors of rooms correct. And it involves a pinpoint of light and streaming the images onto a wall so that they can paint them. He closes the shutters to show the camera obscura at work. Across spidery cracks in the plaster, images from outside pour from a pinprick beam, light unspooling through dust motes like colored smoke. Blues, yellows, pearls he will make more luminous and exact than life. He has often fed the hungry dark. He agrees to paint my mother. Not, I say, like the anonymous women who scrub the little street in Delft. Their faces are shuttered and blank as they clean the brickwork. They are children of war and toil. The portrait should be more like your others, women who are self-assured and self-sufficient. True, my mother was also a child of war, a lucky U.S. civilian out of the working class, married to a brilliant lawyer. During the war, her hand poured out cups of rationed sugar, smoke from burning cities on other continents, carried to our safe U.S. kitchen. The smell of war stuck to our clothes, our nights. My father's portion was to return from the Pacific War, bald from malaria, a stranger to himself. They arrived by ship in Yokohama with 3 children, not long after the bombs stopped. Delft's black and blue sky. A storm is passing. The ground is soaked. One far roof takes new sun in a blaze of yellow. 2 married women or war widows dressed in darkness stand like pilgrims or rain clouds on the silvery canal bank opposite the city's spires. Painting this skyline required memory. Vermeer had to recall this scene from before the explosion in the powder magazine that flattened and burned the whole quarter. It's a postcard from a place lost in time, a homage to the longing for peace against the wartime pressure of violence. There is always a felt absence in Vermeer. He offers a safe place in an unsafe time, like a room in a good house in a dangerous place. The calm is in part the quiet of absence and loss. Yokohama in 1946 was a shanty town built on the edge of bomb craters, full of missing people, undetonated bombs, the boot dug out of the mud with the foot inside, everything coated with the fine ash from the wood and paper homes burned by incendiaries. The air still stank of napalm. No dogs or cats, all eaten in the hungry time. People remembered green hills and a blue harbor before the air raid sirens and mercilessness. The woman in blue reads a letter. My mother, too, reads my letters, my father's letter from New Guinea. A Japanese sniper hid in a shallow cave. They called in the flamethrower. All that remained was a stench and the smoking soles of 2 burnt sandals, handmade from an old rubber tire. The calm paintings hold more than their share of soldiers. War is ever present, like thin smoke. The subject sits serenely on a mahogany chair, but look again. The chair is carved with ravening lions, their jaws open. An old map on the wall above the sitter is scarred with contested terrain. It's a battle map of a country ravaged by war. Bread, early light, shabby sills in disrepair. The sturdy arms of the woman pour the morning's milk. She's intent yet lost in thought, eyes half open, bread, milk, bowl, table, coffee, artifacts of each day's beginning. My mother never missed a breakfast. Girl asleep at Vermeer's table. In time, the sitter dozes off, her mask falling. Then the painter strikes. Vermeer watches my mother start to sleep. He picks up the brush. Vermeer's procuress and client is a celebration, it seems. No condemnation of their trade, an appreciation of their intimacy, the electricity between them. Your father should have been a bishop, my mother says. She was in love, I thought, with Father John Crow, the handsome Irish missionary in Kamakura. He sometimes walked through the Red Lantern district in Yokohama near the bombed docks. When whores propositioned, he tipped his hat and said in his polite Japanese, "Thank you, madam, not tonight." Mirrors, tin and mercury, even the finest old mirrors, betray some shadow or softness, a smoky darkening under the surface. The map above the smiling girl has blue land, a brown sea. Girl open to the world. Man blinkered like a warhorse. Vermeer's mind taps each possibility as though posing each in a mirror. Woman in the light of a man's attention. Woman left to her own thoughts. Man in the light of a woman's attention, and rarely man alone in thought. Even more rare, the couple happily flirting. What of Blake's lineaments? Gratified desire? A fine bishop, my mother repeats. The couple stand at a virginal together, the virginal like a casket open for a Catholic funeral. The man gazing at the woman playing, and she, without his knowing, glances at him in the mirror as he watches. Uncanny, the knowings and secret sightings in a household, the mysterious capacity of the soul to withhold or give itself. This next painting alluded to is the girl with the turban, the girl with the pearl. Merciful, light will never tell on the servant girl with the turban. She fastens her mistress's pearl earring and asks across the centuries how she looks. Riches and want gather in the luster of her eye. Has she just turned toward us, or is she turning away, leaving little echoes of light? Close up, the master has painted a small eye inside the pearl. I am lost in the mother of pearl world, the shine of wet lips parted. She calls you and me into her story, intimate, impossible to share, a closeness that cannot be, product of oil, paint, shellac. The pearl from the sea looks like a tear. In the house, rooms are tidal, emptying, filling with loss and its opposite, delight. All I long for stands in front of me, no way to reach out. Each time I look at her, I think, please don't go. I said this often to my mother when I was small. Looking at the girl, I feel an old glad grief, like music from a silent instrument, a song of life on a broken wing, snapshot of a radiant child on a swing who is no longer alive. As Vermeer paints, they talk. She flirts, makes cracks about life, terrible hospital food. Any guest of my mother gets a feast. When they break for lunch, Vermeer's eyes widen at his luck. Warmed up ossobuco, stroganoff. They talk, gossip really, insider Catholic matters. She tells him how the nuns made her practice on a silent piano. She does not mind shocking him with her irreverence. Proud and prickly as she is a woman often at odds with the truth, holding on to her toxic family secret unto death, and jealous. At first she disliked both the wives her 2 sons married. Neither was worthy, though she came to admire them. The great sorrow in my childhood's house, she could not mother her adopted daughter well. Preferring her sons, she lacked a sense of justice, basic fairness toward my sister Liz. I could say more, but she is my mother. I love her. I miss her competent hands, the axe that lifted her above herself, her style and comic intelligence, her close love and attention to the world's surfaces, words, and fine textures. Finishing the painting or this poem will be losing her again, I say to Vermeer. He nods. He knows. At summer night, another party. My mother comes into my room in her new silk dress to kiss me goodnight. She sits on the bed. I smell her perfume, feel her weight on my feet under the blanket. Please don't go. Earlier that day, we walked to the beach in Kamakura. I show her the great mystery barge brought up high on the beach by the typhoon. My brother and I and 2 Japanese friends, Yamada and Kase, explored the damaged, mazy interior and found one intact room with a porthole through which the shine off the sea poured. The waves reflected in splashed curls of light against the bulkhead. Imagine a secret boys' club to hide in and sit together to make up games and stories. Somebody will claim it sooner or later, she warns. Nothing lasts forever. She shakes her head admiring, never asking who the big barge belongs to. You boys. She sees us and what we do, what we make from a wreck tossed ashore by the storm, shaking her head. Look at you. I ask Vermeer about the problem of the male gaze. For example, I say, an artist long after you named Degas draws nude images powered by the erotic and contempt for women. Then late in the day, a series of astonishing works, women alive in their own lives, alone, unguarded. Late Degas' paintings look like purifications, often involving the bath, by a misogynist who knew he had a lot to answer for. What would you say, I ask, about the women in your paintings? Judge for yourself about me. Vermeer sounds hurt as he cleans his brush. Where did her confidence come from? Vermeer wants to know. I say I'm not sure. She was both the favorite of and the chief rebel against her own formidable mother, a domestic tyrant who was a Catholic feminist, a school principal, and politician, the first woman elected to the Pennsylvania State Democratic Committee, an ally in politics of the United Mine Workers, a reformer who helped end child labor in the state. Rosemary, my mother, and her mom fought like mismatched cats. Starting as a young girl, she ran away for weeks at a time, staying 2 blocks over with her best friend in an Italian family where she learned how to be that rare thing among our Wilkes-Barre Irish, a world-class cook. A skilled nurse in her youth, my mother was the only college graduate in her family. In Japan, she learned to be an expert textile buyer, assessing Irish linen, British tweed, Chinese silk. A budding career might take her around the world. My parents fought about this. She gave it up. Vermeer thanks me for telling him all this. The forms of a work, he says, come alive not only from what you show, but from what you know and hold back. In her favorite dress of slub silk, my mother, no bruise showing, wipes the counter with her apron and uses a chilled wire whip on cream for salmon mousse, another fiesta for old friends. There is Nick Cortelia's pastel of her young, beautiful, displeased. There is no painting of my father, only one really good photograph out of a vanished black and white world, shadowed and dark like a work in oil. He leans forward as if to explain. The composition lifts the eye to the mirror above his head. Matter and presence twine upward. Wisps rise from the cigarette in his hand toward motes trapped by sun or other light. He and I were strangers. The painting would show a glow of red at the tip of his cigarette, the essential spot of color in an old Japanese print that gives the viewer distance. The two men in Delft who resemble heroes specialize in distances. One is the geographer, the other the astronomer. I questioned Vermeer about one of his works, the allegory of painting. He is surely not the artist he spoofs in this strange comic scene. Decked out like a fop, the artist works with a weirdly garbed model. Model and painter are not intimates, but they, like my mother and Vermeer, are kidding, dressing up, having fun, making a small carnival of jokes at the expense of the rule-driven world. I asked Vermeer about the moment when the face on the canvas takes shape and looks at him, raising questions, making claims. They start to talk back, he says, like your mother. The spaces he draws are haunted by silences and empty chairs, envelopes of quiet air, charged electricity in a room whose shining seconds and charmed voices are fated to disappear, pleasures and sorrows that evaporate and rise like smoke, rituals of loss. I tell Vermeer about Mrs. Ramsay begging, "Life, please stand still here." He nods. A sprig of mountain laurel opens me to one Japanese winter. My mother's hair, coal black, blazing against the sun-high snowdrifts at the mountain pass near Gora. For the first time, I glimpse her as a girl. Serene, ecstatic, or mad, a woman is weighing the true of a shining, slender balance. Jewelry and gold bits on a table. A high window slit is the only visible light. Our gaze unites with hers. We too assess the balance itself, its accuracy, our eye to her eye. Vermeer was like my family, Catholic, in his case, a convert. He lived in a Protestant place at a time of sectarian war and the turn of his own church toward cruel dogma and absolutes. I ask him how he squares damnation and deserved suffering with his love for the world's bright surfaces, the uniqueness of the women he draws, the small paradises he finds in single moments of life here and now. On the wall behind the woman in balance, Vermeer includes a painting within the painting, a dim portrait of Michael, the stern angel who comes to judge and sort sinners from the saved on the last day. I was almost named Michael, I start to say, but my mother wants to tell this story. She recalls how she had a hard birth with me, wanted to name me Michael, but was still on strict hospital rest. My father and Uncle Gus took the baby to the church for baptism, stopping off at a bar. After some considerable time, they resumed, having decided I should be named not Michael, but rather Joseph after my father. The baptized name could not be undone. My mother, furious, resolved to call me Jay, not Joseph, which suited me, as I never warmed to my dad and only really knew him after the war, and by then I was 6 years old. The happy woman with the balance Vermeer has painted weighs the things of this life and asks, who am I to judge? Her balance is not a tool of inquisition. It's a mystic home appliance, magic like a golden cricket, a thing airy and yet practical with the graces that come from daily use in a material world, beautiful like a bridge or bicycle or bowl of milk or spoon or patch of silk or sonnet, a means of curious inquiry, precise judgment, finding facts at this moment, right here and now. My mother and I love her, Vermeer's heretic, who dissents from the gloom of absolutes and damnation and eternity. She will be our saint, if anybody is. The portrait, in the end, doesn't look like my mother. To be honest, it's odd. It's of a lace maker. Vermeer, a bit distracted, apologizes, says he won't charge us for it. Like many men, he has found my mother a siren, enchantress, and flirt. He's listened with delight to the flow of her questions and words. She has never once bored him. Both she and her favorite sister, Mary, her life's best friend, are storytellers. Each has an ear for a stranger's way with speech. They are connoisseurs of words and gestures, performers in language who enjoy being center stage, masterful in repartee, wisecrack, imitation, and insult. My father also brought to our family precision, authority, and a flair for words, a similar love for a good story, though his stories were true. Conversation and quarrels played across the walls of our dining room like moving lights. Our dinner table sounded like an opera or political convention. One way a painting can never be like my mother is that it cannot speak. Still, I like her very much, this imagined woman Vermeer has found in my mother. She is easy to love. Her strong fingers tug on threads for piecework. I admire her best of all of Vermeer's storied domestics, the little squinting lace maker. Everything in the painting is a bit out of focus, except for the 2 strands of thread she is holding taut in a cat's cradle. The design might be too intricate, her eyesight failing, the thread not quite right. The arrangement, as usual in Vermeer, is another story we cannot know, but are nonetheless asked to imagine, fabricate, sew, or cook. Felt absences and things left unsaid give life to the forms. It's not her swollen face we stare at. It's the thread, its little V standing out against her thick fingers, the place where all strands join. We concentrate on it as though it were a small being with its own beating heart, its own moment in life. Beautifully wrong, she is one of his late women, her head engrossed by knowledge or deformity. With her pride and faults, her self-absorption, someone loves her, begs her, please don't go.